I have all of these selvages and I want to make something useful out of them. The reason why I like selvages is because they are the end of the fabrics and they don't fray. This makes them really easy to use. You don't have to fold the sides under. They come with all different designs and writing and colours on them. They come with coloured dots like these and different patterns and writing. This one's really cute. It's got bumblebees, but I'm not sure if you can see that. I have a piece of an old pillowcase that is 12.5 inches by 9.5 inches. I'm drawing a 1-inch line up from the bottom edge. Here I'm drawing a 45-degree angle onto the fabric to use for my reference for sewing straight lines. I want to try and keep my fabric in the same direction, so all of the words and the numbers are facing the same way. I'm lining up the edge of the fabric about 1/4 inch overhang on the one underneath, and I'm using a small zigzag stitch to sew it down. Continue sewing the strips in the same way until all of the base fabric is covered. Here I'm trimming off the excess fabric. I think this one is super cute. It's got bouncing cats on it. I'm redrawing the 1-inch line down the edge of the fabric. I'm using a heat erasable pen and now I'm trimming off all of the excess fabric. Now measure 9 inches up from the bottom edge and trim off. And measure 12 inches for this side. So now I have a piece of fabric that measures 12 inches by 9 inches. 5-inch square, fold it in half and then half this way. Draw a 4-inch square within that 5-inch square, so basically 1/2 inch all the way around the outside edges. I now have a 4-inch square within that shape. Measure 1/2 inch down the centre line. Then from the centre line measure out 1 inch and on the outside edge measure down 1 inch and mark the centre line down on the bottom. So what I want to do now is basically just draw a heart shape. Cut around that shape and there you have a 4-inch heart. Fold the fabric in half and mark the centre using a fabric marker or chalk so that you won't damage the fabric. And then mark the centres this way, leaving out the 1 inch from the bottom. Take a piece of fabric 7 inches square and mark the centre in both directions. Now line that up with the centre marks on your main fabric. Now take your heart pattern and centre that also and draw out your shape with a chalk line or fabric marker. We have the heart shape centred onto the fabrics. Make sure that your two fabrics are right sides facing each other and stitch along that drawn line. I've stitched that down and now we're going to cut out the heart shape through all of the fabrics, leaving a small seam allowance to reduce the bulk. Snip down to the point and snip around the curved edges, trying not to cut any stitches. Push the fabric through to the back and give it a good press. I have another square piece of fabric that is 5.5 inches and top stitch that down. Trim away the excess fabric. Using the template, cut out 2 hearts using 2 different fabrics. I've cut around the hearts with a seam allowance of about 3/8 of an inch, 1 centimetre. Find the centre in both directions of this fabric, just like we did before. Here I'm drawing over the fold lines on the heart template so that I can see them clearly and drawing that out in the centre of the fabric. Now I'm placing down the other pieces of fabric where I want the placements. Pin those down. And now I'm going to draw around the heart shape on the inside, which will give me the seam allowance. I'm sewing those down onto the drawn lines because I want a rough edge look. I'm using muslin right sides together on some fabric and drawing out the heart template, and I'm going to sew around that drawn line. Now I've sewn it down, cut away the excess fabric. Cut into the point without cutting the stitches and trim close about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance to reduce the bulk. Pull the muslin away from the fabric and cut the muslin only, and now flip the heart right sides facing out. And give it a good press. I have this decorative trim, it's got tiny beads on it, and I think I'm going to use that. I'm going to sew it down on the stitch line. I'm tying off the thread at the back. I'm going to sew it down by hand using a basting stitch all the way around. I'm cutting tiny snips all the way around the edge, and then I'm going to rough it all up so it looks shabby. I've decided to top stitch it down using a decorative blanket stitch on my machine. I want a frayed shabby look on the edges of the fabric, so I'm tearing it and then pulling the threads out on the side to make it frayed. The width of the fabric is 5.5 inches, and now I'm cutting it to the same length as the main fabric. I want the frayed edge to overhang. I'm placing it about 1.5 inches from the edge of the fabric. Here I'm just checking that both sides are even. And top stitch those down. I've sewn some decorative blanket stitch down here and also around the heart just to finish it off. And now I want to trim these seams back to about 3/8 of an inch, 1 centimetre. I'm putting fusible fleece down the centre. The width of the fleece is 4¼ inches. Fold the fabric in half, right sides together, and measure 1¼ inches up and 1½ inches in, and cut out the corners. I'm using Decabond, which is a medium weight fusible interfacing, and I want to put it on the back to give the bag a bit of structure. These are the cut pieces from out of here, and I've folded in the long sides and top stitched them down. Push them through the rings, making sure that the right side of the fabric is facing out, and we're going to top stitch those down. Trim away any excess interfacing. Cut a piece of lining fabric the same size as your outer fabric. Find the centre of your main fabric at both ends and mark the centre of your zip. Now lay your zip right sides facing down onto your fabric. Take your lining piece and lay it right sides facing down and clip that along the edge of the zipper as well. Sew that down. Flip your lining over and give it a good press. I'm just going to cut away some of the interfacing to remove some of the bulk from within that seam. Top stitch that down. Now bring your main fabric up to match the main fabric and match the centre marks to the zipper on this side. I pulled my zipper tab off by accident, but I'll put that back on after I've sewn it up. Flip it over and do the same for the lining. Sew that down. Trim away the bulk from the seam allowance the same as before. I knocked the zipper pull off the end by accident, so I'm just going to open the zipper. And top stitch it down from this side also. Now I'm going to put the zipper pull back on. Measure down 1¼ inches from the zipper seam, and this is where we're going to put the tab. I'm only clipping it to the front fabric only, not to the lining. And baste those down to the outside fabric only, not the lining. I'm going to baste the zipper end also, just to hold that in place. Flip the bag wrong side out. Line everything up, pushing the zipper over to the lining side. I'm going to sew down both side edges, but I'm not going to sew that part there. I'm going to leave that open. Make sure to backstitch at all ends. Line up your corners and clip those down. And the same for the lining. And sew those down. Cut away the excess zip. I like to fix the corners on my bags. Take the base of the outer and turn it up, and then take the base of the lining and flip that over. Now line up the corners and pin down. We're only going to sew within the seam allowance to join those corners together. Now that we've joined the corners together, we need to turn the bag right side out. So find the opening in the lining and berth the bag. Be careful, take your time because you don't want to pop a seam. Check everything is okay, and if you're happy, find the opening and pin the closing together and then sew that down. And it's all finished. How cute is that? Don't you think the Selvages just make a wonderful original fabric? And the final measurements are 8 inches by 11 inches by 3.5 inches. What a great size. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please give me a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, all of the above. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully I can continue making these videos for you. Thank you for watching. Until next time.